is the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast.
Greetings and salutations, friends. It is I, the celebrity medium. You know, it never feels right to me to say it is I. But I'm told that's the way you're supposed to say it. I've got another edition of the Celebrity Afterlife Report, the only show on the internet that gives you the up-to-date bit of gossip about all your favorite deceased celebs. A quick programming note. I have some relatives visiting me next weekend, which is when I put the show together. So I may or may not be able to do the show, depending on how things go. I'm definitely not going to be doing a show the week after that because of the July 4th holiday, but I'll make every attempt to get one up next week for you. I just wanted to alert you to this possibility. Alrighty, let's dive right into this here. A popular lifestyle blogger in France died after a whipped cream dispenser exploded and hit her in the chest, according to her family. Her name was Rebecca Berger. Now, I never heard of this woman, but apparently she had a large following on Instagram and wrote a lot about fashion, food, and fitness. And this thing blew up inside her home, and that sounds kind of awful, actually. I'll just read from the story here that I found online. The blogger's relatives posted a photo on Instagram of the high-pressure whipped cream dispenser, which was recalled 4 years ago. Quote, "Here's an example of a whipped cream dispenser that exploded and struck Rebecca's thorax, causing her death," unquote. Her family wrote, warning others not to use the dispenser. They were going to do an autopsy on her to find out what the actual cause of death was. All right, so now we've got that out of the way. She arrived in the next world soon after she left the earthly plane. And there was a reception for her, as there almost always is for celebrities of any note at all. Not a huge crowd on hand, but a crowd, nevertheless, a nice-sized crowd, I'm told. Here's where it gets a little creepy. So she seemed a little, what's the word, unfocused, is that what I want, or kind of dazed, which sometimes happens, and I've mentioned this in the past to people who arrive in the afterlife. She seemed a little bit out of it, and which is not unusual. It doesn't mean anything terrible is going on. They come out of it, and everything is fine. And while she was on stage, and James Brown was talking about her to the crowd, there was a loud noise in the crowd, and apparently it was kind of like a PTSD thing for her. I guess it kind of took her back to the whipped cream dispenser exploding, and her knees gave out underneath her, and she kind of fell down to the stage. Now, you can't suffer any serious injury in the afterlife. You can bump your head or, I think you can break a bone, but really nothing beyond that. So she hit the stage, and people ran over and helped her, and she is okay. But it was kind of an inauspicious start to her new existence, and I'm sorry that happened to her, but kind of an awkward moment. Just one of those things that happens, I guess. Okay, we've been talking seemingly forever about this movie that Salvador Dali and Jean-Michel Basquiat are shooting in Environment, the indoor rain attraction in the afterlife. They started to make a movie, got way in over their heads, had a giant replica of the Sphinx constructed for this movie, about which nobody really knows much of anything at all. The Sphinx has Michael Jackson's face. That much we know. Beyond that, we really don't know anything. Anyway, they decided they were in over their heads, so they bring in Stanley Kubrick, the famous director of 2001 and Paths of Glory and A Clockwork Orange and a whole bunch of other amazing motion pictures. He came in on condition that he was given full creative control over the project. So they did it. They gave it to him. And since then, from what I'm told by my afterlife sources, they've been kind of regretting it because those two guys, Dali and Basquiat, are kind of control freaks, sort of. They're used to working alone, and Kubrick is a major control freak. So they didn't know what they were getting into. Well, now they're in it. The rumor was he was bringing in George C. Scott. Okay, that he was considering it. Okay, the word is now that he is hiring George C. Scott to to be in the movie, which is still unnamed and about which we still know nothing at all. The rumor going around is, you ready for this? George C. Scott is going to play Salvador Dali. And on top of that, Peter Sellers, who was in Dr. Strangelove with George C. Scott, will be playing Jean-Michel Basquiat. Now, Basquiat was half black and half Haitian, or what? I'm trying to remember, half black and half, I guess, French? I forget. Anyway, Peter Sellers looks nothing like him, nor does George C. Scott look like Dali. So I guess they're not going to try to look like the guys, but they're going to be them in the movie. And one can only imagine what the real Dali and Basquiat think of all that. But, you bring in Stanley Kubrick, and you get Stanley Kubrick. I mentioned last week he's going to be shooting this movie using 3D movie equipment, but the movie will not be screened in 3D. He's doing it to get a certain effect that he wants, which he says he can only get by shooting it in 3D. Ooh. Why am I making cheesy horror movie sounds? It's not a horror. Well, I don't know if it's a horror movie. Maybe it is a horror movie. Nobody knows. Speaking of creative control freaks, Steve Jobs and Walt Disney have supposedly come to a truce. They were arguing over the name of the town that used to be Trump City that they have taken over. Jobs was calling it Mediopolis. Disney objected to that because he said it was too close to, what was the name of the thing? There was a teenage nightclub in Disneyland in the 80s, in the mid to late 80s, long after Disney was off the earthly plane, by the way. Mediopolis, that's what it was. And that ended up kind of a failure. They closed it after 3 years. Disney said Mediopolis was too close to Vidiopolis. Steve Jobs said, nobody remembers Vidiopolis, Walt. You weren't even around for that. What's the big deal? All right, apparently the truth is that the name Mediopolis will be kept. Walt is going to run an American Experience, unquote, theme park in the front end of the town. When you come into the town, whatever the American Experience is going to be, it's actually the formal name is the American Experience at Mediopolis. I gather it's kind of like Main Street in Disneyland and Disney World, like an old-timey kind of town, that, kind of a Leave It to Beaver kind of thing. He's going to run that, whatever that is, and Jobs is going to run the tech R&D behind the scenes in the back of the town where the tourists don't get to go, where the real stuff gets done. So Disney gets to play stuff and Jobs gets the actual, nose to the grindstone work stuff. That's how they worked it out. Lastly, we've been talking about this movie that Gilda Radner is making, along with her, once again, husband, Gene Wilder. They were married in the earthly plane. They're married again in the next world. And what we do know about that is that she is a mousy secretary. Her boyfriend breaks up with her. She works with the boyfriend at the office. The boyfriend breaks up with her. She's driving home and she's kind of upset. She drives past a secret government laboratory. Some radiation or something comes out of it, strikes her. She's knocked out, but she's turned into kind of a superhero. The government lab comes outside. They find her. They bring her in. They recruit her to work for the government against international evil. And we know that her government boss will be played by Roger Moore, who will be using the name R. His character's name is R. Get it? Like M and Q in the Bond movies. He's R. I guess he falls in between M and Q. So we know that. And now we know that the search for the person to play her boyfriend who breaks up with her at the beginning of the movie has come down to either Rock Hudson or Cary Grant. So, two good-looking guys. And I don't know how they're going to determine who gets the part. I guess, are they going to audition Rock Hudson and Cary Grant? Guys who have been like in 1 million movies each. They're going to audition them and make them compete? Not sure. But the story going around the Afterlife is it's down to those two. One of them is going to be the boyfriend with whom she breaks up, who she still works with, and he doesn't know she's a superhero and like that. It's a comedy. That's what we know at this point. Okay, that's it. I might be back here next week. I hope so. If I don't have to show my relatives around an area they've never been to. But if I'm not, then I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And if I am, you'll see me next week. Anyway, I would so appreciate it if you would tell your friends, family, neighbors, strangers on the street, whoever you may encounter, bus drivers, about this podcast. Because after all, it is the only show on the internet that gives you the up-to-the-minute gossip about all your favorite deceased celebs. You can find it on iTunes. You can find it in the Google Play Store. And you can hear it on K-Chung Radio, AM 1630 in Los Angeles, where it is run on Mondays on a show called Inspirato Radio around noonish. You can hear it there if you happen to be in the LA area. Wherever you hear it, I'd appreciate it if you would tell people about it. I'd appreciate if you thumbs up it or start it or, whatever you do on that particular social media thing that you're listening to it on. I'd like that so much. You'd be my friend forever and ever. All right, I'm a Slim and Medium. Hopefully I'll be back next week. We'll see. We'll see what happens, boys and girls. Hang in. Until then, thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Celebrity Afterlife Report podcast. To ask a question about your favorite deceased celebrity, call 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-3-MY-DREAM. 818-369-3732.